Good afternoon, I'm Antoine Meunier, editor of la chronique spatiale.com. Welcome to this panel, Space Exploration, What Ambitions for Europe? This year we are celebrating two important anniversaries for European space exploration, happened 10 years ago. First, the landing of Philae on the comet Chury, and the other, the launch of the very last ATV. So this year, a new step in the field of manned flight has been reached as Europe has chosen to launch a cargo services competition. We have with us one of the winners of this contract, unveiled by ESA a few weeks ago. So this technical initiative is of course totally different with the ATV. So 10 years later now, let's try to see what are the assets for Europe to send its own astronauts into LEO to explore the moon and maybe one day beyond. To discuss the topic with me, three guests. First, Massimo Comparini, Deputy CEO of Thales Alenia Space, Ralph Zimmermann, Head of Space Exploration at Airbus, and at last but not least, Didier Schmidt, Head of Strategy of Human Robotic Exploration Program at ESA. Let's go first to Leo. So, gentlemen, my question will be for each one of you. By 2030, 2031, after the decommissioning of ISS, what can be the level of autonomy for Europe in the new landscape of LEO that is emerging with the commercial space stations? Who wants to start? Ralph.
I was the quickest one with the microphone, so good afternoon, everyone. What is Europe's autonomy? I would say autonomy is an asset which Europe needs to have, and this goes for space, so uplift for the launchers. This goes for any other discipline. If we have no autonomy on some things, we will not be recognized as a fair partner to everyone else in the world. Nevertheless, I doubt that Europe should have the ambition to really do everything by themselves all alone. I guess this, from my experience, is not the right way. So usually we work in partnerships. We work a lot in partnerships with NASA, with the Americans, and with other partnerships also with Japan and with Canada. This bringing me, you asked for the end of the ISS. Airbus is involved with Voyager Space and Starlab LLC, which is I must say, almost global alliance of industries in order to create a commercial space station. Here we have America with Voyager Space, we have Europe with Airbus, we have Mitsubishi Industries in Japan, and we have MDA in Canada. This uniting all the partners of the ISS, except for the Russians, of course. Yeah. So, and in this perimeter, I guess we want to create a space station and offer this as a service to the agencies, to NASA, to ESA, to DLR, to CNES, and the others.
And apart space station, what are the involvement of your company in the human transportation, apart ESM, of course, European Space Module for Artemis?
Yeah, you mentioned it. We are heavily involved in the Artemis program like that. Human space transportation so far in Europe is not yet planned currently, and either better let Didier talk about that. Has launched the LEO cargo return program, but human transportation is currently not foreseen on Ariane 6 and not on the cargo transporter. But this is, of course, cargo is always the first step to go, and after that you can see what you can do in order to expand it to human transportation or human habitats. So habitat, of course, is human.
Massimo, what are your views?
Well, first of all, I think that it's extremely important to recognize that under the ESA leadership and, of course, through the cooperation of the member states in the last 10 years, Europe has moved to be one partner of exploration, to be a kind of fundamental partner. So it's very hard to think any kind of mission without Europe. And I think this is a first remarkable achievement that all together with the agencies, with the European Space Agency, with the European industry competing, but also cooperating in partnership a lot, we achieve all of us, first. Second, of course, looking to the end of the decade, we know that we need to figure out what will be the post-ISS. Let me remember that what was the ISS and what was the role of Europe? Of course, I have in mind also the role of my company, because we built about 50% of the pressurized model of the space station, and in the new race in the commercial space station, Rolf mentioned Voyager. Of course, we are building right now the first 2 models of the Axiom commercial space station. So, I mean, European industry, it's well placed, and of course, as Rolf said, I mean, the cargo and move large quantity of material from Earth to the low Earth orbit, and then behind is extremely important. So, of course, we are really proud of the quality of our proposal in the selection of ESA for the space cargo. I think it's another piece of leadership of Europe, because we are thinking of the first potentially reusable cargo with the possible evolution of manned configuration. So it's really the proof that Europe is really on the frontier of that. And I say that because, you know, we launch so far up to 22 of our Cygnus cargo together with Northrop Grumman for NASA. So I really think that looking to the end of the decade, this wave of Europe having a large role, it would be kept and it would be further developed.
The timetable is very short, because you have to make a demonstration mission by 2028. Can you tell us what steps remain to be taken to be on track for that schedule?
First of all, I think that you know, technology-wise, we need to. Okay, the re-entry it's a part of the challenges. I think that we have all the enabling technologies. I don't want to say concern, but the point of reflection is the supply chain. We know that in the last few years, for a number of reasons, we suffered some time elongation to the supply chain. We had a number of, let's say, global events like pandemic, the geopolitical crisis. So I really think that to keep the clock to be ready in 2028, it's an effort which is it's not an effort for a single company. It's an effort really for the entire ecosystem. And I'm sure, and I know that how with the European Space Agency, with our partners, we need to work to keep that. But timing is also the essence. So I really believe that to prove that in 2028 we can be ready for the post-ISS is extremely important for Europe and for us.
Okay. So Didier, what are the points, the view from ESA?
That's a very open question. I mean, first of all, we have to remind that there will be a very significant shift from an ISS program, which originated in an international cooperation mode. We skipped the details about the geopolitics at that time, towards something where we want more to buy a service. It was not our decision. It was the decision of the US, on the NASA side. So why did they want to shift from an international cooperation mode, which worked quite well, to something which is, let's say, which is a little bit unknown to many of us, to ask industry to co-invest and to say, these are the services we want from you, and we can be an anchor customer if you can provide this. Now, this shift has been decided because NASA wants to reduce the cost of LEO, because they need to shift budgets to the moon program. Let's be very open and transparent about this. So we have not a choice than to move towards this way as well. we're not, so to say, unhappy about it, but it is a reality which has not been initiated on our side. So the other question obviously comes right after. As long as you have the ISS and international cooperation, you have an institutional-driven utilization. We are pushing for commercial utilization. It's difficult. Now, when industry, so to say, is on its own, and we just say, this is our needs, this is what we will be purchasing from you, and whatever else, because it will cost more, you have to find other customers. This is where it will get difficult. And therefore, I am personally a believer into a very strong continuous institutional support, because one of the major justifications on staying in low Earth orbit is not just to do science and maybe commercial activities if they happen one day, but it's to prepare the next step. And the next step is not the moon. The next step is the very deep space exploration, the round trip to Mars. So that, for me, is one of the major drivers.
You mean the next step? You mean for human exploration to go, the next step is Mars. But are we ready to go to Mars now, to send man to Mars at this time?
Well, if we don't start working on it, I will be long somewhere in another world when we will be there. Okay. So we cannot always say it's too far away. We haven't spoken yet about the other elephant in the room, which is China. And this morning there was a session about technology dominance. We are in a world of competition in technology dominance. It has been the case for the Apollo program and the Cold War. It is bis repetita again. So, and it will happen. It may be even very fast. I mean, so fast that you cannot even foresee it. Mm. One day it will happen, and then, you know, it's like a sprint. If you're not ready, you're out.
Okay. Let's go back to the cost. You mentioned reducing cost. Is having multiple human and cargo capabilities a way to lower prices? And what market share can Europe capture in the emerging LEO market of commercial stations, from your view?
I would say, first of all, from an industry side, and Didier was introducing it fully correctly, that the agency is going to buy services. For industry, it's of course, as we are commercial industry, we need to have a business case. Which means for a business case, we need to have a market, we need to have a plan to whom we want to sell the services, who might be our customer, our community of customers, I might say, in order to implement these kind of commercial services. For the space station, the one Airbus is involved in, so this Starlab, we have a plan, of course. We have, NASA is one of the anchor customers, as we are also allied with Voyager Space. We hope to get the other agencies well as customers, and this gives a business plan. And when you have a business plan, of course, industry, it's a pure calculation, how much money do we need to invest, and when we have a break even in order to gain some money out of it, because we're not doing it just as a hobby, although it's very interesting. Yeah.
Massimo?
Well, two answers. First of all, I mean, if I have in mind our floor, it's full of pieces which different destinations. So I think that we really move already in a kind of industrial phase of the exploration, and this is, of course, it's extremely important to have a supply chain, to have a cost base which is more and more competitive. First. Second, I fully agree with Didier. I mean, of course, we know that the commercial LEO destination, we will have a future. It's important to understand when first big customer will pay 20 million, 25, 15, 30 to send an astronaut for 2 months to make the research, to make made in space. And of course, we need to prepare for that, but I really believe that still let's say, it's extremely important, the institutional, not support in strict terms, but the institutional vision of what will be the post-ISS. Of course, public-private, it's entering the game. We have examples of that. I really think that this is an area of work in the coming years, but I really believe that, let's say, it's still to be assessed what will be the return of investment of billions to build a commercial infrastructure. But on our side, we need to prepare. And as you said, we need to be competitive, and I think that it's extremely important to have also the synergies among all the different programs that ESA and also the national agencies are launching. We are going to discuss in a few minutes about the moon, so I will give some examples, but I really believe that this is extremely important to be prepared for this race.
And in Europe, who are the private players that can operate future LEO stations?
We know, I think that the market, we know what is with the market, the big pharma, new materials, food tech, but again, plenty of opportunities. We had for the second year in a row in Cannes a very nice conference, Earth from Space, where we start to see the chief scientists of big pharma coming on stage and think about how they can use those infrastructures. So I really believe that those are the non-space market that are looking to these. But as Ralph said, then the big elephant is always to have the anchor customer, which is as a service from the space agency, NASA, ESA, I'm sure that Didier may comment, and also national space agencies.
And Didier, what do you think? Well, who can be the private players for LEO in Europe?
I don't know. There is a crowd out there. You mentioned conferences and so on, and we are nurturing, you know, some ideas and so on. We have people knocking at our door. We help them. We co-finance and so on. We're ready even to finance the mass and the crew time to do experiments which could be developing into let's say a private initiative. You know, when you're in this situation where you don't really know, and there is a lot of, you know, test and see and look in the eyes and so on, we don't know when it will really start. And of course, the cost is a real issue, and this is why we are driving down the cost with this competition also on the cargo. Because if we're not able to provide a cargo up and down capability and a lower cost than the average cost today, provided by others, we're anyway out. So that is the number one criteria. Now, that's why I'm coming back to the institutional aspect. If we have, and it's not we, if industry finds the right customers, we are supportive. If it happens, tant mieux. I'm in charge of future programs, not just strategy. I need to also look into plan Bs. What if it doesn't happen?
Let's go to the moon. The Artemis program has started almost 2 years ago now. In the return of the moon, what are the benefits for ESA and industry to be in cooperation, with NASA? Didier.
Let's rewind a few seconds. First of all, why are we in this process with NASA towards the moon? Because we have shown that we can be a very trusted and very competent partner.
Could we be alone?
We could. I mean, these guys know what they're doing. It's the problem of convincing politicians and to have the right budget. So but the issue is a little bit different. You have to imagine, and I come back to this problem of space dominance, which is an American attitude, technology dominance. And therefore, we are still in the wake of something bigger. And this dominance is an ideological dominance. And I mentioned China, you can imagine the relation I want to make. And therefore, we have chosen a side for many reasons. But choosing a side doesn't mean that forever we have to be just in the wake of somebody else.
Yes, you mean on one side there is USA, the other side there is Asia now. Yeah. So, but what are we doing?
Let me finish. No, the thing is that we have now a third, let's say, big possible partner, which is India. And India wants to be at the same level as China and the US. And therefore the question is, where do we stand as Europeans? Do we always stand by our preferred partners, so to say? Or do we diversify? Or do we get mature for once and exist by our own? That is the real question. But in the meantime, of course, we're going to the moon with the US.
Okay. Massimo, Ralph, your opinion?
But in the meantime, as the DSA say, we build the infrastructure. So we're building the gateway. In this very moment, we have 3 big infrastructure. We have the International Habitat, the Esprit, and we are building those 2 modules through the European Space Agency. From our side, we're building also the logistic module with Northrop Grumman for NASA. You know that we have a kind of long-standing bilateral cooperation also with the US Prime and NASA. A couple of months ago, under the contract with the Italian Space Agency, we start to think about the first lunar surface module, the so-called MPH, multipurpose habitat, which is, of course, it's part of the discussion to be a piece, a building block of the lunar foundation habitat with ESA and NASA. So in the meantime, I think that we are keeping the role of Europe really fundamental to build the next phase. And as Didier said, I think that really to explore cooperation with other countries, having in mind that it's a fact we are going to have really a bipolar world. We have China, Russia one side, and we have our long-standing partnership in the Western countries, and India, of course, it's a very relevant player. I mean, a few months ago, when their first lander came to the moon, I had a number of questions from people who said, "Okay, you are surprised?" Not at all. I mean, it's India. It's a big country. They have a very long-standing scientific academic experiences as well as a good technology base. So I'm sure that with the level of Europe today, it could be a good partner to work with.
Ralph?
Let me come back a bit to the question which you had initially, can we do it alone? I would say yes, we can, theoretically. We cannot do from budget, because if you see from budget in Europe, we spend about 10 euros per inhabitant per year on space, on all space programs altogether.
You mentioned finance, but how can we find new finance?
Let me just expand the idea a bit to give it an esprit. What I think, and I started this already in the beginning, and I guess my colleagues mentioned it the same way, it is not a question if theoretically we can walk alone. I mean, you have a good saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So in this sense, we need partners, I think. Space has always been a great area to work with international partners, and I think the further we go into the space, and first moon, and let's what Massimo talked about, having a gateway around the moon, we are building the European servicing module, bringing the people over there, and then once we have established that, go even a step further to target for Mars and bring astronauts to Mars. I don't think that Europe will be willing and strong enough financially to do this on an institutional level paid by the governments. And according to my experience and maybe I lack of vision here, I have a lot of vision of working together with international corporations, with NASA, with Japan, with Canada, and even India, and someday maybe China. Why not? Yeah, we can think about it. We just need to see what we can do together, where we protect our assets, and how we can do it. If we want to have big endeavors, a race to the moon certainly is a push on. This is like the first race to the moon, Apollo, Soyuz in the very beginning. Now we are a bit similar with China, who reaches the south pole of the moon first and who can explore all the potential water reservoirs which we expect might be there in order to use the moon as a basis in order to continue to Mars, because from moon it's much easier to reach Mars than just from Earth, just as a matter of orbit mechanics. So I'm really very much convinced it is not a question of what we can do alone, it's a question who are the right partners, how do we make the case interesting, and from my experience, it's just too cool to fly to the moon. And this will give a new vision for the people, for the young people, to see now we have people on the moon walking again there, and doing the next step, and not just in movies of Hollywood, flying to Mars and bring people there. This is just inspiring. This is inherited in mankind to go to the unknown. I mean, we have done this all our history long. And so by this, I think there's not a question why we do it, it's just what is the best way to do it, who are our partners, whom do we need to convince in order to do the steps, and that's it.
We are talking about the moon, but why is there no robotic missions to the moon at this time, as there were India last year, Japan in the beginning, and China is keeping the way. Why still not a robotic mission, Didier?
2012, we had a ministerial conference. We asked for a budget for a small lunar lander to do a first step. It has not been granted because there were other, soi-disant, other priorities. This was a very big mistake, a posteriori. So that is the reason. The reason is not because we lack ideas, we lack vision, because we have to go to the politicians every 3 years and ask for budget and justify. So if we cannot transmit this vision to the decision makers, we have a problem. I think we have changed this quite a bit. So we're catching up. We are now developing a decent lander, so the Argonaut, which could carry at least 1 to 1.5 tons of payloads. We will even continue working on the concept studies on bigger landers, because this is what is needed. Now, what will change completely, and we haven't spoken about the tip of the iceberg, which is the astronauts, and this is the political and ideological kind of aspect. There was only one generation, so to say, who saw, let's say, humans on the moon. It was only for 3 years, 69 to 72. From TBD years onwards, when it starts, there will be every year regular missions, and there will be hopefully Europeans on the moon if we get the right quiproquo with the US. There will be Chinese, there will be others. India has a complete plan of human spaceflight in a couple of years, their own space station, their own moon landing, and so on. So it will be a continuous space. So the very, very big difference is the sustainability, at least for a couple of decades maybe, on the political side, until we go for the next gold rush, which is Mars.
So we have now more than 10 minutes left. I think that we can maybe take some questions in the audience. Y a-t-il des questions dans le public? Une question.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this inspiring spatial session here. United States Press Agency, Ramarajdi. I have a question regarding the regulation of the space. Is there any club or group of legislators over the satellites and over the missions over there in space? Because I know for sure that in the US there is a club for that with governors. Thank you.
So who wants to answer?
Well, it is a question about regulation. I mean, regulation, it's not just for the satellites, it's also an issue for human spaceflight. If we dwell a little bit on the moon, the Argonaut Accords, which the US is doing on a bilateral, multi-bilateral way, signing with everybody who wants to sign it, is about so to say, it's not a regulation, it's an entente that when you land, not you, but the US, when they land, they have, for example, a security perimeter around the landing site. Now, the same, let's say, the US is also saying that China, the intention is to land on the moon, to have some kind of territory. Now, I'll let you judge. I think it's 1-to-1 here. So regulations you cannot really make anymore. For a regulation, it has to be on a UN type of level, you know. And if you have only a regulation on the for the Western countries, and you don't include Russia and China and others, it doesn't lean anywhere. So from now onwards, it will be very difficult or impossible to have like in the 60s, 67 and so on, for the Moon Treaty. It will be, in my sense, impossible to have a UN-level agreement on anything about space anymore, because there are too many diverging interests.
If I may add, Didier, of course, it's a fact that the new phase of the moon exploration will be completely different. Let's say, we will learn to work on the planet, we will learn how to use the in situ resources, and by definition that will be a competition. And I think that, of course, we need to take care of what are, let's say, basic rules to go there, but I'm sure that it will be extremely difficult to have an UN-like regulation putting everyone in agreement, because it's by definition, I mean, it's a new phase where we will have interest, which is geopolitical as well as economic, and will be a competition. We need to be honest. I mean, and I think this is also part of the game, how to have a strong Europe in the international game.
Alf, you want to add something?
No, basically the major theses are told here. We have a conflict of interest between several parties in the world, and you can only have a regulation when everyone agrees to something, and I don't think that we are converging in this currently. We should not stop dreaming, but I say at some point in time we might come to something, but usually, sadly enough, we can only agree on something after we had catastrophe somewhere. So I hope we don't get to that point here.
Yes. Do you think that the recent actuality in Europe can have an impact on the exploration programs?
Well, if I might just continue on that one, yes, of course it has. I mean, we were in a quite close partnership with Russia before. This is known. It has a deep impact on the Mars program, which was also built up with Russia before. Now we build it, reconstruct it, redesign it to do it without Russia. Just from my personal history, I have personally worked with the Russians for many years on the ISS perimeter, and usually I regret a lot that we don't have the possibility anymore, because usually the Russians, engineer to engineer, they're great guys. Yeah, it's fun to work with them. This is nothing I would complain about. And so at some point in time, maybe we get the politics again that we can continue in space the cooperation. Space was, even during the Cold War, many years, always a place where where Russia and the United States cooperated quite openly and quite cooperatively, and still they do it on the ISS as the last perimeter where they cooperate. But I hope we come back to the time that we continue cooperation in space internationally.
Okay.
Oh yeah, quickly. I mean, I worked quite a bit as well in the 90s in Moscow and Star City. At that time, this uncontrolled perestroika had a big blow on a full generation of engineers with a big dip that you can see 20, 30 years later. Now, the current situation, you can imagine miracle happens quickly and things get better. You will have a problem, an economic problem in this country, you will have a trust problem in this country, and so on. So I think unfortunately, I don't see anything happening decently with Russia anymore, at least within a decade. It's very unfortunate. Can they catch up? I don't know. Will they want to catch up in this field? I don't know. They made history all over before the US landed on the moon. They made history all over. You know, first satellites, first animal, first human, first woman, first long duration, name it, everything, first EVA. They did all the firsts. This technology competition, they won everywhere. We forget about this. And it's such a pity that this country who has so much resources, intellectual, is now in this situation.
I think that we can take some other questions in the audience.
Thank you. Between exploration and science and space commercial operations, do you think that it does mean the same technical solutions? Because we were putting together that there is an opportunity for synergies, but do you think that finally we can find a technical solution that can fit the both of them?
Massimo?
First of all, I want to say that there is still a lot of science to be done. I mean, sometimes I think that when we talk about new space economy, or let's say this economy way, we go a little bit too fast. I mean, okay, we will back to the moon. Let's imagine what will be the scenario in 5 or 10 years from now. We will have a number of astronauts working there. There is a lot to understand how to work in that planet, how you can work on a continuous, let's say, mode, and how to learn in that environment to work for the next step that Didier mentioned, which is huge challenges we have. Because if we think today to go with a man to Mars, let's say, it's not for granted that after 2 years and a half he's in a good shape back on Earth. And it's not just a question of money, it's a question of a lot of science, a lot of studies to be able. So I think that we will have for sure still a lot of technologies to be reliable when you operate on the planet. Back to your point about robotics and what Didier said, I really believe that if we look 10 years from now, for each astronaut on the planet, on the moon, we will have a number of rovers, we will have a number of machines helping him. So for sure there is a synergy. I mean, if we are going to land on the moon on a reliable basis, that will be institutional, that will be commercial. I'm sure that we will have synergies.
But what type of activities? Are there any other activities than science that we can do, not only on the moon, but also in LEO?
I think that in situ resources, if we look to the moon, in situ resources and the local resource utilization, it's one of the key pieces of the Artemis Accord. And on LEO we know, made in space, I mean how to make recurring the production of new materials, new crystals, new compounds.
Ralph?
Yeah, I would say that what we can use from what we build now is if we want to go commercial, and this is where we started the discussion originally, we have several things which need to just become cheaper. We talked about the launch costs, and I guess Josef Aschbacher mentioned it before also. We have a competition on small launchers. We need just to make sure that the transportation from Earth to orbit becomes affordable, more affordable than it's yet right now. And then we have other use cases. I mean, for the startup, we're working together with Hilton Hotel Group in order to first lay out this startup in a convenient way. But second, this does not include that in the very near future we build just one station as a hotel. And if the transportation to orbit, to LEO, to near-Earth orbit, becomes affordable, that is not only affordable to multi-billionaires, then probably why not have a hotel flying around in 300 kilometers altitude? This is absolutely possible, and it's not so far away, I would say.
How long from, in your view?
35 to 40.
Okay.
Best guess, sorry.
One quick addition to this. The moon is not a purpose in itself. And NASA's motto today is Moon to Mars. Whatever they want to do on the moon, meaning staying 28 days, they want to have a copy-paste for the Mars missions. The lunar surface robotics, pressurized robotics, and so on, the collaborative robotics, everything they do has the vision to be used immediately copy-paste for the Mars missions. So we shall not forget this, you know. And again, if we're stuck on the moon, as well with anybody else, so to say, we will miss the next train. We have done a very good job in providing this service module to go around the moon, to the gateway station around the moon. We have been, sorry to say so, we have been cut out of the landing, human landing part. And if you don't land, you have no say. And therefore, we have to be careful that if we're late for the next challenge, even if it happens in 20, 30 years, doesn't matter. If we're late in preparation for that part of the challenge for Mars, we will also be only not number 2, maybe 3, 4.
The main objective the main goal for ESA is to have an astronaut by 2030. Will you be on time for this goal?
Yeah, no, it's not just one astronaut. What we want to do, and you know, we have 22 member states in the program, so we cannot please every 22, of course, with having 22 astronauts on the moon one day. But we have to have a certain number, you know, a kind of frequency, and we need to plan this out over a decade with NASA on our contributions. All the contributions I mentioned buys us 3 seats at the gateway. You know, doesn't buy us yet the foot on the moon. So we are working with the Argonaut program, with other things we have in mind. We will table in November next year at the ministerial conference. We will have a full proposal to make this quid pro quo and see how we can barter with NASA about their needs. But it's not just having one in 2030. It's having a number of, let's say, astronauts who will work and do research and science and so on and learn what it is to be on a solar system body, again, for the next step preparation.
Okay. We have now 2 minutes left, and that will be my last question for the 3 of you. What do you want Europe to do more in the field of exploration? Massimo.
I think that, let's say, in a number of talks, I heard that, okay, Europe needs to change. I think that Europe needs to continue what has been done in the past years. And I think also what we discussed today is a good proof that we have not only ideas, but we have a large piece of technologies available. Then, as Ralph said, I mean, I think that we need to build up a consciousness in our government and member state that this is not just to make fantastic things, but it's really part of a technology sovereignty. We cannot skip to be a player in space and exploration if we want to keep, let's say, our economies and our countries and our continent important in the geopolitical game.
Ralph?
I can make it very short. What I've learned from, and I'm working on the Artemis program on the Orion spacecraft myself, what I've learned, you're only an equal partner if you are strong on your own capabilities. So what Europe, in my eyes, needs to do is develop and maintain own capabilities where we are extremely strong on, because otherwise we will never be regarded as a fair partner to whomever, and it doesn't matter whether it's with China, India, or US. That's it. So work on our capabilities and explore them.
Yeah, I mean, fully sure what Massimo and Ralph has just said. What we need, 8 seconds, courage. We need to be in a position where we have the self-determination mentality. Without this, we will be followers and waiting for the others to tell us what to do. This needs to change. You can only be an equal partner and a good partner if you have a self-determination as much as the other partner.
Well, we have arrived at the end of this session. Thank you, and please give your applause to the participants.